Imagine a cold and star-filled night in the middle of the American Civil War, where the air is thick with the smell of wood smoke and desperation. Inside a brick warehouse in Richmond, Virginia, over 1,000 Union officers are packed like sardines into freezing rooms with no glass in the windows. They are starving and shivering, and losing hope as they rot away in the Confederate capital. But beneath the floorboards, a secret operation is underway that defies belief and challenges the very limits of human endurance. This is not just a story about a prison break, but a tale of sheer willpower and ingenuity in the face of certain death. How did a group of weakened men manage to dig a tunnel through solid earth right under the feet of their guards without being detected? The year is 1864, and the location is the notorious Libby Prison, which stands as a grim symbol of Confederate authority in Richmond, Virginia. The building itself is a massive 3-story brick structure that previously served as a warehouse for a ship chandler and grocer named Luther Libby. It sits on a steep hill overlooking the James River and is surrounded by vigilant guards who have orders to shoot any prisoner appearing at a window. The isolation is palpable, as the prison is located in the heart of enemy territory miles away from the safety of Union lines. The streets outside are patrolled by soldiers, and the local population is on high alert for any sign of trouble from the Yankee invaders held within their city walls. Inside the prison, the conditions are nothing short of horrific, as the overcrowding reaches critical levels, with officers sleeping on the bare floor in rows. The rations are meager, consisting mostly of cornbread made from unsifted meal, and perhaps a few ounces of rancid meat, if they are lucky. Disease runs rampant through the population, with dysentery and typhoid fever claiming lives on a daily basis, while the lack of sanitation makes the air foul and unbreathable. The psychological toll is immense, as men who once commanded regiments now find themselves powerless and stripped of their dignity. Yet even in this environment of despair, a spark of resistance burns in the hearts of a few determined men who refuse to accept their fate. Among these prisoners is Colonel Thomas Rose of the 77th Pennsylvania Infantry, who is a man of iron will and quiet determination. Colonel Rose is not the type to sit idly by while his life wastes away in captivity, and he spends his days studying the architecture of the prison. He observes the movements of the guards and the layout of the building with the eye of an engineer and the patience of a hunter. He knows that a direct assault on the guards would be suicide given their weakened state and lack of weapons. Therefore, he concludes that the only viable path to freedom lies not through the heavily guarded doors, but through the earth itself, deep beneath the foundations of their prison. Colonel Rose finds a kindred spirit in Major, a G. Hamilton of the 12th Kentucky Cavalry, who shares his burning desire for liberty. Together they form a pact to escape or die trying, and they begin to recruit a small circle of trusted officers to aid in their plan. They know that secrecy is paramount because a single loose word could alert the guards and result in severe punishment or execution for everyone involved. The group grows slowly and carefully until it includes 15 dedicated men who are willing to work in shifts through the night. They call themselves the Board of Advisors, and they swear an oath of silence that binds them together in their dangerous enterprise. The plan they devise is audacious and fraught with peril, as it involves tunneling from the basement of the prison to a shed located 50 feet away on the other side of a fence. The basement is known among the prisoners as Rat Hell because it is infested with hundreds of squealing rodents and filled with piles of trash and straw. It is a dark and damp place that the Confederate guards rarely enter due to the overwhelming stench and the vermin. This neglect provides the perfect cover for the prisoners to access the foundation walls, but getting down there without being seen is a challenge in itself. They must cut a hole in the floor of the kitchen area and cover it up after every shift. To access, Rat Hell Major Hamilton uses a pocket knife to carefully remove the mortar from around the bricks in the back of a fireplace in the cooking room. This allows them to create a narrow opening that can be concealed by replacing the bricks and covering them with soot and ash. Once inside the basement, the men have to crawl through the filth and darkness to reach the east wall, where the digging is set to begin. The air down there is stagnant and suffocating, and the rats are bold and aggressive, often scurrying over the men as they work. It takes a special kind of courage to descend into that abyss night after night, knowing that discovery means death. The tools they possess are laughably inadequate for the task at hand, consisting of nothing more than a broken shovel-handled 2 case knives and a wooden spittoon box. They also use large clamshells gathered from the rations to scrape away the hard-packed earth inch by agonizing inch. The ground is dense and difficult to penetrate, requiring immense physical effort from men who are already weakened by hunger and illness. They work in teams, with one man digging at the face of the tunnel, while another fans fresh air into the hole with a hat. A third man is tasked with hauling the loose dirt back into the basement, where it is hidden under piles of straw. Ventilation becomes a critical issue as the tunnel lengthens, because the air inside the narrow passage quickly becomes depleted of oxygen. The digger can only work for a few minutes at a time before he has to retreat, gasping for breath and soaked in sweat. To solve this problem, the prisoners devise a primitive bellows system using a rubber blanket and a wooden box to pump air to the front. This ingenuity allows them to continue their work, but the physical toll is staggering, and many of the men collapse from exhaustion after their shifts. Despite the hardships, they press on, driven by the singular hope of breathing free air once again. The digging process is slow and painstaking, with progress measured in mere inches per night as they navigate around large stones and roots. They have to be completely silent because the sentries are patrolling just a few feet above their heads outside the prison walls. Any loud noise or vibration could alert the guards to the activity beneath them and bring the whole operation crashing down. The prisoners develop a system of signals to communicate danger with a tap on the wall or a tug on a rope, warning the diggers to freeze. The tension is constant and suffocating, creating an atmosphere of high-stakes paranoia where every shadow looks like a threat. There are moments of near disaster that threaten to derail the entire escape plan, such as when the tunnel collapses or they hit a wooden beam. One night, the diggers accidentally break through the surface too early and find themselves staring at the feet of a Confederate guard. Panic ensues, but they manage to plug the hole with a pair of pants and some dirt before the guard notices anything amiss. These close calls serve as terrifying reminders of the precarious nature of their situation and the thin line between success and failure. Yet each near miss only strengthens their resolve to finish the job and escape the hell of Libby Prison. After weeks of grueling labor, the tunnel extends over 50 feet and passes under the fence that separates the prison from the outside world. The men are exhausted and their bodies are pushed to the breaking point, but the end is finally in sight. They calculate that they have reached the area beneath the tobacco shed, which is their intended exit point. Colonel Rose decides to make the final breakthrough himself to ensure that they are in the correct location. With trembling hands, he pushes his tool upward and feels the resistance of the earth give way to the open air of the shed. The date is February 9, 1864, and the night is chosen for the breakout due to the cover of darkness. Colonel Rose gathers the men who worked on the tunnel and organizes them into small groups to avoid drawing attention. They establish a strict order of exit with the primary diggers, going first, followed by the other officers who are in on the secret. Word of the escape begins to spread quietly among the other prisoners, and soon a long line forms in the kitchen. The tension in the room is electric, as hundreds of men wait in silence for their chance to crawl to freedom. One by one, the officers squeeze through the fireplace opening and drop down into the foul darkness of rat hell. They crawl across the basement floor to the tunnel entrance, which is a small black hole in the wall. Entering the tunnel is a terrifying experience, as the passage is barely wide enough for a man to fit his shoulders through. They have to drag themselves along on their stomachs through the damp earth, with the weight of the ground pressing down on them. The air is stale and hot, and the fear of the tunnel collapsing is a constant companion during the agonizing crawl. As they emerge from the tunnel into the tobacco shed, the fresh, cold air of the winter night hits their faces like a shock. They are covered in mud and filth, but for the first time in months, they are outside the prison walls. But the danger is far from over because they are still deep within the Confederate capital of Richmond. They have to move quickly and quietly to leave the shed and blend into the city streets without alerting the sentries. The plan is to walk out of the gate casually, as if they are citizens or workers going about their business. The escapees adopt various disguises and strategies to evade capture as they navigate the hostile streets of Richmond. Some pretend to be Confederate soldiers, while others act as local farmers or laborers returning home after a long day. They move in pairs or small groups, keeping their distance from the patrols and avoiding eye contact with anyone they pass. The city is asleep, but the danger of discovery lurks around every corner and under every gaslight. They head toward the outskirts of the city, aiming for the Union lines, which are miles away to the north and east. Back inside the prison, the line of men waiting to escape grows longer and more chaotic as the night wears on. The discipline begins to break down as desperation takes over, and men push and shove to get to the fireplace. Major Hamilton tries to maintain order, but the sheer number of prisoners clamoring for freedom makes it difficult. Eventually, the sun begins to rise, and the men realize that they must seal the tunnel to protect those who have already left. With heavy hearts, the remaining prisoners close the opening and return to their sleeping quarters, hoping the guards will not notice the absences immediately. The morning roll call on February 10th is a scene of confusion and disbelief for the Confederate prison officials. The count comes up significantly short, and at first they believe the prisoners are simply hiding within the building. They conduct a thorough search of every room and corner, but the missing men are nowhere to be found. It is not until later in the day that a guard discovers the tunnel exit in the tobacco shed. The realization that over 100 Union officers have escaped right under their noses sends shockwaves through the Confederate command. A massive manhunt is immediately launched as Confederate cavalry and patrols fan out across the countryside in pursuit of the fugitives. The alarm is raised in every town, and village surrounding Richmond and local citizens are urged to be on the lookout. The escapees face a harrowing journey through swamps and forests in the dead of winter, with little food or warm clothing. They are hunted by dogs and soldiers, and many are forced to hide in barns or thickets during the day and travel only at night. The physical and mental exhaustion is overwhelming as they push themselves toward the distant hope of safety. For Colonel Rose and Major Hamilton, the journey is particularly arduous, as they are the most wanted men in the region. They manage to evade capture for several days, moving stealthily through the woods and avoiding the main roads. However, their luck eventually runs out when they are spotted by a Confederate picket near the Union lines. Despite a valiant effort to escape, they are surrounded and forced to surrender. They are brought back to Libby Prison in chains, where they are placed in solitary confinement as punishment for their leadership in the Breakout. Of the 109 men who escaped through the Tunnel, 59 successfully reached the Union lines and freedom. 2 men drown while attempting to swim across the icy James River, and 48 are recaptured and returned to prison. The success rate is remarkable considering the odds against them and the harsh conditions of the escape. The news of the breakout reaches the North and is celebrated as a heroic triumph of the Union spirit. It serves as a morale booster for the war-weary public and a source of embarrassment for the Confederate government. The escapees who make it to safety bring with them valuable intelligence about the conditions in Richmond and the fortifications around the city. They provide detailed accounts of the suffering inside Libby Prison, which fuels the outrage in the North and leads to calls for better treatment of prisoners. Their stories are published in newspapers across the country, turning them into instant celebrities and heroes. The escape becomes a legend of the Civil War, symbolizing the indomitable desire for freedom that drives men to achieve the impossible. Back at Libby Prison, the security is tightened drastically to prevent any future escape attempts by the remaining prisoners. The guards are doubled, and the basement of Rat Hell is thoroughly inspected and sealed off permanently. The Confederate authorities are humiliated by the breach and determined to make an example of those who were recaptured. Yet despite the harsher measures, the spirit of the prisoners remains unbroken. They continue to dream of freedom and look for new ways to outwit their captors, knowing that the tunnel proved it could be done. The legacy of the Libby Prison escape endures long after the war ends as a testament to human resilience and ingenuity. The tunnel itself is eventually filled in, and the prison building is dismantled years later, but the story lives on. It is remembered as one of the most daring and successful prison breaks in history, studied by historians and military strategists alike. The tools they used are preserved as artifacts of their determination, and the names of Rose and Hamilton are etched into the history books. Their feat reminds us that even in the darkest of times, hope can drive men to move mountains, or in this case, dig through them. The psychological impact on the Confederate leadership cannot be overstated, as the escape exposed severe vulnerabilities in their capital's security. It forced them to divert valuable resources and manpower to hunt down the escapees and guard the prisons more strictly. This distraction came at a critical time in the war when the Confederacy was already stretched thin on all fronts. The embarrassment of losing so many high-ranking officers was a blow to their prestige and a propaganda victory for the Union. It highlighted the crumbling infrastructure and waning control of the Confederate government. For the men who were recaptured, the return to Libby Prison was a bitter pill to swallow after tasting freedom so briefly. They faced months of continued hardship and deprivation before the war finally ended, or they were exchanged. However, they carried with them the pride of having participated in the Great Escape and the knowledge that they had struck a blow against the enemy. Their bond as members of the tunnel-digging team remained strong for the rest of their lives. They held reunions after the war to recount their experiences and honor the memory of those who did not survive. The story of the Libby Prison escape is filled with moments of incredible luck and terrifying close calls that seem almost cinematic. From the initial breaking of the fireplace to the final crawl through the narrow tunnel, every step was fraught with danger. The fact that they managed to hide the dirt and the noise from the guards for so long is a miracle of discipline and coordination. It speaks to the desperate creativity that arises when human beings are pushed to the absolute limit of their endurance. It is a narrative of survival that resonates with anyone who has ever faced insurmountable odds. Today, the site of Libby Prison is marked by a plaque and a flood wall in Richmond, but the physical structure is gone. The landscape has changed dramatically over the last century and a half, burying the secrets of the past under modern development. Yet if you stand on that hill near the river on a cold winter night, You can almost feel the ghosts of those men. You can imagine the fear and the adrenaline coursing through their veins as they slipped into the darkness of the tunnel. Their story is a haunting reminder of the cost of war and the priceless value of freedom. As we reflect on this historical puzzle, we are left to wonder what gave these men the strength to keep digging when all hope seemed lost. Was it the thought of their families waiting at home, or simply the refusal to die in a cage? The Libby Prison escape challenges us to consider the depths of our own resilience and what we would be capable of in similar circumstances. It stands as a shining example of the triumph of the human spirit over tyranny and despair. And it leaves us with the enduring question of how far one would go to reclaim their life. Ultimately, the Great Escape from Libby Prison remains a pivotal chapter in the annals of true crime and historical mysteries. It combines the elements of a thriller with the gritty reality of war, creating a compelling narrative that has stood the test of time. The ingenuity of Colonel Rose and Major Hamilton and the bravery of the 109 men will never be forgotten. They proved that stone walls do not a prison make, nor iron bars a cage. Their legacy is one of courage, persistence, and the unyielding pursuit of liberty.